Jiang Xiaoya is just an ordinary high school student who lives a mostly normal life. On the outside, she looks like any other girl her age, going to school every day, hanging out with her friends, and worrying about tests and homework. But what people don't know about her is that she is hiding a strange little secret. Recently, she had started having the same dream every single night. In that dream, she sees a man weeping for some reason in the middle of a battlefield, and in the middle of his crying, she suddenly springs up towards that man, and both of them share a kiss. Well, that's pretty much it. That's her deepest, darkest secret, that every night she keeps seeing herself kissing the same mysterious man over and over again. Today was no different. She was walking to school, replaying the scene in her head once again, while trying to understand why she kept having the same dream every night. Just then, in the middle of her thoughts, she suddenly got startled as another person silently crept up on her from behind. Turns out it was her blonde friend by the name of Shishi, wearing that familiar teasing smile, who somehow already knew the girl was daydreaming about men again. Well, turns out Shishi knew her little secret about that strange dream our girl had been having lately, and that didn't help Xiaoya, because this cheeky little one always teased her about that red-haired man she keeps talking about, commenting how he could be her Prince Charming. As for Xiaoya, she told the girl not to say stupid things like that out in public. Just then, in the middle of their conversation, Xiaoya suddenly noticed a red-haired man walking past them, and that caught her attention because for some reason his hair and the shape of his head looked almost exactly like the man she kept seeing in her dream. So in her panic, she quickly turned around and started running after the guy while telling Shishi to tell their teacher she was going to be late today. Shishi obviously tried to stop her, but it was no use. The girl was already gone. Fast forward a couple of minutes, and she was still silently tailing that man who was also tailing a drunkard. Pretty weird scene, two weirdos tailing a drunkard into a quiet alleyway, and Xiaoya knew what she was doing was extremely stupid, so she started questioning herself. Why was she chasing some random man just because he looked familiar? For all she knew, he could be a criminal, or worse, some kind of creep. Right in the middle of her self-questioning, she saw the man suddenly turning into an even shadier alleyway. Instead of doing the smart thing, she made the dumbest choice possible and went straight after the man. But as she looked in through the corner, she noticed that the place was empty, but since she had a death wish and had already come this far, she sucked it up and started running in to find that man. Well, for the first few steps, it wasn't that bad. At least she made it halfway down the alley. That was until two hands appeared from the shadows, wrapping around her mouth and trapping her completely. Turns out it was that same red-haired guy, and for some reason he was telling the girl not to make any sound. Yeah, Xiaoya knew she was screwed, so the poor thing started tearing up, knowing full well there was no saving her anymore. But surprisingly, the man released her mouth while telling her to turn back and leave. But then his eyes landed on her face, and he froze for a second. Well, what do you know? This guy somehow knew about our girl, and seeing her here of all places, he showed surprise. But poor Xiaoya, seeing him make that face, was getting really scared of the guy. Next chapter, and the poor thing was screaming her lungs out while trying to call for help. And that happened to be the dumbest thing she did all day because the kid realized right then that both of them were dead. Yeah, both, not just him, and you'll see why in just a sec. As for now, he quickly turned towards the alleyway where that drunkard was stumbling around. But to his horror, the guy was nowhere to be seen, and that only meant one thing. They were now being hunted. As he was distracted with that, trying to come up with a way to save both of them, the stupid little girl behind him saw a shoe drop right next to her from above. And instead of looking up, the girl went at the shoe and completely failed to see that massive shadow that was coming straight for her head. In those few seconds they had, Redhead noticed the massive thing coming towards the girl, so he quickly pushed her out of the way and at the same time leaped out himself as whatever it was crashed right next to his face. But the problem was that the thing was faster than he had expected, resulting in him getting hit by one of its attacks, which launched him back through the alley, and he crashed into a dumpster, and hard. And remember what I said earlier about both of them being dead? Yeah, this is what I meant. That drunkard wasn't really a drunkard, but this monstrosity that was slowly crawling towards our girl with that drooling mouth. The girl was so terrified by the creature that her brain basically hit pause. Instead of running, she tried handing the thing its shoe back. Yeah, great idea. The creature let out a loud scream instead, and it literally made her soul leave her body on the spot, and she fainted. She completely blue-screened. She won't be waking up anytime soon. As for the monster, yeah, this was perfect for him. So it prepared to sink those massive fangs into the girl, and just as it was inches away from her face, that same dumpster came flying at it from the side and hit him dead on, sending the thing flying back into the distance. But something like that was nowhere near enough to stop the monster, so it quickly landed back on its feet. After which, it turned towards the one responsible for tossing that massive thing at it and froze as his eyes landed on that individual. Well, it turns out it was that same kid who wasn't as weak as he seemed, because the guy had some kind of a blue flame covering his entire arm as he slowly walked towards the monster. Yeah, the creature might have been a mindless beast, but it wasn't stupid, and since it was clear the kid in front of him was trouble, it quickly turned around and started running from the place. Redhead decided to go after the thing to finish it once and for all, but then his eyes landed on the unconscious girl beside him, so he decided not to do that because he had more important things to take care of first. Next chapter, and Xiaoya was seen running through some dark place while trying to get away from something, and that something was that same bony monster thingy that managed to catch up to her, and the next thing she knew, she woke up screaming in some completely different place. The girl was completely terrified after everything that happened and was still trying to process what was going on. Just then, she was startled hearing the voice of another person in the room who was asking if she was alright. Turning towards the man, she saw a blonde guy telling her not to be afraid, and according to him, he found her unconscious out in the alley, so he brought her into his shop. Hearing him say that, the girl thanked the man for helping her, but the man wasn't done with her, so he asked what was a schoolgirl like her doing in that alleyway in the first place in the middle of the day. Our poor little Xiaoya, hearing that question, started unloading all of her sorrows on the man, telling him everything she saw there, how she got attacked by a white monster-looking thing while tailing after a red-haired man, and obviously the man didn't buy a single word of that and told the girl to calm down because he didn't see any monsters or red-haired men in that alleyway. And with a smile, he assured the girl she must have just had a nightmare or something. That even had the girl wondering if everything she saw was just a dream because it felt way too real to ignore, and not to mention she just saw that same creature in her dream, so there was a possibility everything had been nothing more than her imagination. Just then, her attention got drawn towards the clock on the wall, and she saw it was already 3 p.m., and that had the girl panicking because she was late for her afternoon classes, meaning she was doomed. So she quickly reached for her bag while thanking the bartender for taking care of her while she was asleep, and bolted from the place, telling the man she was going to swing by later to properly thank him. But for some reason, the guy told the girl to stop. Surprised, she turned around and saw some kind of a necklace in his hand, which he handed to the girl. Surprised, she asked what the thing was. Turns out this thing right here is some kind of a protective charm, which the man was instructing the girl to keep with her, claiming it was going to bring good fortune her way and ward off evil energy. This gesture from a complete stranger surprised the girl because clearly the thing looked important, so she tried handing it back to him. But as she looked up, she saw the man holding a whole box filled with those things as he told the girl it was going to cost her 13 yuan. Yup, she was not expecting that at all, and all her gratitude disappeared on the spot because she was thinking the man was giving her the thing for free. But turns out it was just some sales tactic which the man used to trick her into buying the item. Fast forward, and she ended up buying the thing and was slowly walking out of the place in silence, as the man instructed her to wear that thing for 3 days straight if she wants that thing to work properly. But the girl was too overwhelmed to even respond after such a weird day, so she quietly kept walking. As for the man, he himself turned around towards his shop, and turns out he wasn't any ordinary bartender either, since he was with that same redhead who had been silently watching both of them from the shadows. And after everything that happened, it was now clear to the bartender that the girl's life was now in danger, so he asked him if he thinks that girl was going to keep that amulet with her. That was indeed a good question, and knowing that the answer to it was probably no, the kid got up to go after that girl before those things find her again. This actually surprised the blonde because Redhead wasn't the kind of person who cared about anyone, but for some reason he was actually acting in such a way for that little girl. Cut to our girls' school building, and on the inside, a woman was seen screaming at someone for not showing up to classes the whole day. Yep, it was our girl getting chewed out by her teacher, who was not happy about her ditching school to chase after strangers. So she told the girl to go back and write her a 2,000-word introspection essay if she wanted to get off the hook. After some time, our girl was seen sitting in her class, cursing her luck because she was exhausted from everything that transpired today, and now she had to write this stupid essay before going back home. But still, she couldn't help but wonder if everything she saw today was really a nightmare. Fast forward to the end of the school day, and Shishi came to check up on our girl, and started scolding her for running off like that back there, without any explanation. As for our poor Chad, knowing she was right, she could only apologize to the girl for making her worry. As for those tears, they were not because she was feeling guilty, but rather because of the essay she was forced to write, and Shishi knew that too well. Just then, in the middle of their conversation, Shishi's eyes landed on that necklace given to Xiaoya by that blonde bartender, so she quickly reached for the thing, asking where she got this item because it looked beautiful. Just as she touched the necklace, she felt a calm and warm feeling washing all over her, so she asked Xiaoya what was up with that. The girl herself had no clue, so she just told her the same thing that the bartender said to her, that the item was some sort of amulet that keeps bad energy away. But Shishi quickly twisted that idea, and with a grin asked our girl if by any chance this thing could be a gift from that red-haired kid she ran after that morning. Yeah, not helping. Xiaoya was already having a hard time concentrating on the essay, and now her bringing up that man once more only made things worse for her. As for that necklace, the girl informed Shishi it was nothing more than a cheap prop sold to her by a bartender who helped her that afternoon. And since the girl was showing so much interest in the item, our girl suggested both of them go and buy one for her as well, As much as Shishi wanted to, she couldn't because she was forced to go to her hometown tonight by her parents for this weekend. And to make it worse, her father was already here to pick her up and was waiting by the school gate. This surprised Xiaoya because Shishi usually avoided long trips thanks to her weak stomach, since she is very prone to getting car sickness. So she fell into thought for a minute, and after brainstorming through the problem for a bit, she made the dumbest mistake of her life as she told the girl to keep that amulet as a gift because she was sure that thing could alleviate her car sickness. But of course, Shishi refused, saying how she couldn't possibly do that, but our girl, digging her own grave, insisted, commenting how that thing wasn't even that expensive, so she'll just go get another one tomorrow. So in the end, Shishi had no other choice but to accept the item. But in the middle of that, she suddenly noticed something outside the window, so she quickly ran to the door, bidding our girl goodbye since she can't keep her father waiting any longer, and sprinted towards the exit, leaving our girl alone in a big empty school. Well, probably not the only one, the janitor was likely around somewhere, but hey, no necklace to protect her from those monsters, and an empty school building with no one around. What could go wrong, right? Oh, and of course Shishi wasn't done, so she appeared right back, and being the good friend she was, reminded the girl she still needed to finish that essay, and suggested she get back to work. Fast forward a couple of minutes and our girl had already given up and was thinking of heading back home to finish the thing after a proper meal, since she hadn't even eaten anything since this morning. Cut back to her apartment building and surprisingly, she made it back home safely without anything jumping at her on the way. But to her surprise, her parents weren't home, and reading the note left by them, she realized that both of them had gone out on a business trip, and since this was nothing new to her, she didn't think much of it and went straight for the shower to get herself cleaned up. But while doing that, she couldn't help wondering if today's events were really just her imagination because every part of it felt unbelievably real. Just then, in the middle of her thoughts, her gaze turned to the side as she noticed something odd outside her window. Yup, that same drunkard, perverted monster that was staring right at her from outside her window while the girl was in her default skin. Well, for a second or two, her brain went completely blank at the sight, until she finally caught up to what was going on, and the poor shivering girl completely froze, not just because of the sight, but because her apartment was on the 12th floor. But not like the creature cared about any of that, so it pulled back its head and violently headbutted her window, shattering the thing and causing the girl to scream in horror. And in typical horror fashion, instead of trying to run out the door, she fell to the ground and started scraping backward on the floor to try and get away from the thing, but of course it was no use and the creature slowly started to crawl into the place to end what it couldn't this morning. As for the girl, she closed her eyes, realizing there was no saving her anymore as some sort of dark energy thingy started manifesting in front of the monster. Well, it turns out that dark thingy wasn't the work of the monster but someone else, as the thing turned into some sort of a barrier, preventing the creature's jaws from reaching the girl. As for the one responsible, yeah, turns out Xiaoya had more than one creep keeping an eye on her while she was bathing. And this second creep didn't exactly seem happy with a weirdo barging into his future waifu's house unannounced. So he sent the creature flying back, and it crashed into the wall violently, but it was far from done, so it quickly got up to confront the person. That's when our girl's eyes landed on a familiar fat head walking into her bathhouse, who clearly wasn't happy how she gave away the amulet to a friend that was meant for her. But still, since he was a gentleman, he didn't even bother looking at the girl and simply tossed his jacket on her body, so he wouldn't get distracted while beating the living daylights out of that monster. Meanwhile, the creature, seeing how the kid wasn't even taking him seriously and was busy trying to rizz up a girl, was getting really irritated, and in its anger, it lunged straight at the kid to skewer him alive. Whoa, now that's cool. The kid just moved his hand and drove the creature's front spikes into the back ones without even any effort, and in that same split second, he swung his leg and delivered an attack of his own at the monster's face, and once more, it crashed back into the same wall, which I'm pretty sure Zhangya's parents aren't going to appreciate when they get home. And since the monster was now completely immobilized and cornered, Redhead prepared to end this once and for all. Seeing him coming, the creature knew he was dead, so it frantically started looking around to find anything that might save him from the kid, and its eyes happened to land on the water tap right next to it. So without a moment's hesitation, it swung its spike towards the thing, which also caught our hero off guard, and before he could process what the thing was planning, a burst of water sprayed from the tap, causing the kid to stagger back a little, and using that chance, the creature made its escape once more through that massive hole in the wall. By the time Redhead caught up to what was going on, it was already too late because the thing was nowhere to be seen, which wasn't good because, according to the kid, that thing was no ordinary rot beast, and clearly that was a big problem. Just then, in the middle of his thoughts, he suddenly heard a voice from the back, and that startled the kid. Looking back, he saw our girl slowly walking up to the kid, asking who he was and what that monster was that tried attacking her. But the kid was lost in his own world, watching the girl walking up to him, because no normal human can enter into this space. Before she could ask anything else, she noticed blood dripping down her nose, and this surprised the girl, and for some reason because of that, her vision slowly started getting hazy, and before she knew it, she completely blacked out, Fast forward and our girl was seen slowly opening her eyes to some strange beeping sound. And no, she wasn't in a hospital, but in her own bed, and that beeping sound was her alarm clock. As for her clothes, yeah. Turns out after she blacked out last night, Redhead took it upon himself to dress the girl and brought her back to her bed. But she didn't know that, so the first thing she did after waking up was reach for her phone. And well, no notifications or messages. Turns out our girl is a complete loner. Well, not like she cared about that stuff anyway, so she quietly climbed out of her bed quite literally. I mean, how short you have to be climbing out of your bed like that. Walking toward her shower, she wondered if everything that happened last night was just another one of her dreams. Because of course, who would believe that in the middle of the night, a bone-faced monster climbed 12 floors just to get into her shower while she was bathing? Well, what do you know, sparkly clean with not even a single dent on the wall, which pretty much confirmed it for her. She was just losing her mind. There is no such thing as a monster. Yeah, no, that was until her eyes landed on that broken window on the side, and she froze. And I mean quite literally this time, because a broken window only meant one thing. Monsters are real. And one of those things was actually after her for some reason, and she didn't even know why, because she was just a scrawny little schoolgirl with barely any meat on her bones. So why would a monster want to snack on a bag of bones like her? But she quickly forced herself to calm down when she noticed an even bigger crisis in the room. And apparently that crisis was under her shirt. So she took a quick peek, and yeah, that was definitely a bigger problem than a monster trying to turn her into its next meal, because her plot armor was missing. And if that thing was missing, it could only mean one thing: that Redhead was the one who dressed her last night. But then again, she told herself to calm down and rethink everything that happened. So first, a bony monster broke into her house, causing her to scream for help. Then a heroic red-headed boy broke through the wall to save her and even gave her his jacket. Then whatever happened in between. But the important thing is she fainted after everything was over because of a headache, after which she woke up on her bed completely dressed. Yeah, that confirmed it for her. That creep really did go through her closet and dressed her while she was completely knocked out. Realizing how serious the situation was, the first thing she did instead of calling the cops was to run straight for her closet to find something nice to wear, because she needed to find that boy no matter what. And her reasoning wasn't because that creep had the nerve to go through her closet and dress a poor defenseless girl such as her. No, but because there was still a chance that monster could show up at any time. Well, she wasn't wrong, but there was just one problem. She didn't even know the guy's name, let alone where he lived. But in the middle of that, she suddenly recalled his words from last night, how he seemed to know about that amulet she gave away to Shishi, and quickly realized that the blonde bartender and this redhead were somehow connected. And in order to get to this kid, she needed to find this bartender first. Cut to the blonde who was peacefully cleaning the glasses, knowing full well no customers were going to appear today as well. Just then, a tiny little foot was seen appearing, and was seen smashing through the front door. Yeah, the kid instantly recognized the girl from yesterday and asked what was she doing here. But our girl wasn't in the mood for games, so she slammed the main desk in frustration and with a blushing face demanded he tell her where can she find that creepy redheaded guy. Seeing her angry expression, Blonde himself got a little scared, so to shoo her off, he told the girl he has no idea what she was talking about. But this time, the girl wasn't falling for his words and told the blonde she wasn't going to get fooled by his lies like yesterday, because clearly she was attacked by a monster last night, and that same red-headed guy appeared to save her, who also happened to mention that same amulet he sold her. Just then, as he was trying to come up with an explanation, a voice came from the side, telling the kid there was no use hiding it from her anymore. Yup, the same redhead. And that surprised our girl because she was so focused on the blonde that she completely missed him. As for Redhead, he told the blonde that the girl was just like the two of them, so there was no use lying to her about this stuff. Seeing his face again made Shanya jump a little. As for the red-haired kid, he clearly did not care about her reaction or about why she had been trying to find him in the first place. Just then, he received a text on his phone about something urgent, so he quietly got up and prepared to head to that location while instructing Blonde to brief the girl while he takes care of this small problem. But our girl wasn't done with him, so she told the kid to stop, and her first question was who he was and what was up with that monster trying to harm her. But Redhead didn't have time to answer her questions, so he told the girl to ask that stuff from Blonde instead because he was busy and didn't have time to babysit her. But the girl wasn't listening, so she demanded the kid stop immediately because there was another question she wanted to ask of him. And yup, it was about her pajamas. She woke up wearing, and if it was him who put them on her while she was unconscious. Yeah, no hesitation. The kid straight up told the girl he was the one who dressed her last night and brought her to her bed after driving away that creature. Flustered and angry, our girl tried lashing out at the kid for doing that, but before she could get another word out of her mouth, the guy was already gone. Just then, she heard the bartender's voice from the back and almost jumped out of her skin because she had completely forgotten about him. As for the man, he suggested she don't go after him because it was dangerous, but the girl was dead set on getting an explanation from that man for everything that happened last night. And seeing her determination, Blonde told the girl there was a very high chance she might get jumped by that same monster again out there. Yeah, that was all it took, so she obediently plopped on a nearby chair to wait for the kid to come back. With her finally calmed down, Blonde properly introduced himself as Zhao Lei, the bartender of this fine establishment. So did our girl, telling the man she was Zhang Xiaoya. With introductions out of the way, the man told the girl that the creature she came across yesterday is called a rote beast, which is formed from an animal's carcass that is infected by some kind of virus. As for the one she came across, that thing was a special case, because usually rote beasts don't lock on to just one target, because they lack enough intelligence to recognize their prey or follow them, which means the one pursuing her is a mutant, which also means these attacks will continue until that thing is properly dealt with. But he assured the girl that while she was inside this place, no harm would come to her because those things can't enter into this building. As for them, they were a secret organization specializing in dealing with this kind of creature. That only raised more questions in our girl's head, so she asked how do they manage to face such monsters on daily basis, because clearly it was dangerous. Well, it turns out they aren't any ordinary humans because they possess some special powers, and according to Zhao Lei, she was also one of them. Curious, she asked what kind of power it was and immediately regretted it the very next second for even bringing it up, because the man's head literally caught on fire. But he assured the girl not to panic and asked if she was able to see the flower on his head. Yeah, the girl had the same question as most of us. How is that thing a flower? And in her panic, she started flailing around, yelling at the man to put it out before his head burned off. Zhao Lei quickly told the girl to calm down, because this wasn't fire. He explained that this is a phenomenon caused by the emission of spiritual power, which they call the flower. Then came the obvious question, why name something like that flower when it was clearly nothing close to a flower? Okay, this part is going to get confusing for most of us because it sure as hell was confusing for me, so I'll try and explain it in the simplest way possible. So basically, he told the girl about a novel called The Gathering of the Essence, Chi, and Spirit. Yeah, I had the same expression when I first read this because this guy just drifted way off the story here. Okay, so back to the main topic. According to the kid, it was just how it was described in that novel. There is an energy flowing within everyone's body, which is usually referred to as spiritual power, and people such as themselves who inherit special power can control the emission of this spiritual power and form it into techniques for combat purposes. Yeah, still a bit confusing, I know, but Blonde isn't done yet. He told the girl that through training, a person could increase both the amount and strength of their spiritual power, which also made their body and physical strength grow stronger. But that isn't the only thing that happens. Once a person's spiritual power reaches a certain level, it starts leaking out of their forehead and temples, and that leakage starts reacting with the spiritual power scattered around the world to form 3 gaseous lumps, which take the form of lotus flowers. That was interesting at all, but it still didn't answer our girl's question. That thing over his head didn't look remotely like any flower, so why call it that? Well, it turns out Blonde here is still a trainee and hasn't reached that level that his body could handle 3 of those lumps and can only create 1 flame at a time. So yeah, basically the true form of this emission is called a flower and not what she was seeing right now. But wait, there is more. According to Blonde's knowledge, which he managed to gather from his boss Jiwoo, it was now pretty much impossible to see a full lotus flower because the spiritual power in their world has thinned out a lot, which was why no one was able to access that much power anymore. Our girl asked about this Jiwoo and who he was. Well, turns out it's the name of that redhead, and yeah, he is the real boss of this place. But ignoring that, he congratulated the girl because her being able to see this flower clearly means she was one of them, and was qualified to inherit this power from within something called Feng Shen Bang. And this Feng Shen Bang is an item from that same novel he was blabbering about earlier, and our girl seemed to know about this item as well. So she asked, what did that fictional item have to do with any of this? Well, it turned out not everything from that story was fictional. That item was real. It just was not exactly like the version in the novel, even though it served a similar purpose. In the story, it was a book that held the names of people destined for great power, whereas their Feng Shen Bang worked in a different way. Instead of names, it acted as a seal that held countless evil spirits, along with the power of the warriors who fought those spirits in the past and sealed them inside that item. Because of that, the item could pass down parts of those warriors' power to the next generation, giving them an advantage against monsters like the rot beasts. I hope that somewhat explained what is going on here. As for our girl, most of that stuff went completely over her head. As for the parts she did understand, she was still having a hard time believing. So she asked the blonde why did he compare that item to something from a novel instead of just explaining it to her directly. Zhao Lei answered, explaining that the powers being passed down to them along with the names of those warriors were also mentioned in that story. So basically the novel was not completely fictional, it held some truth to it as well. Yeah, this was all way too much for her pea-sized brain to process, so she just stared at the blonde with that dumb look on her face, and knowing full well everything he just told her went straight over her head. The kid just smiled at the girl, telling her all she needs to understand is that she can use those powers to hunt down the rote beasts. But our girl, though even after seeing everything with her own eyes, was still having a hard time believing his words because she was sure the man was trying to pull her leg or something, But Xiaolei assured the girl that wasn't the case and told her to just wait until their boss returns because he was planning on helping her open her nodes for her. Xiaoya, on the other hand, was still not sure if she was cut out for this kind of life. Just then, in the middle of their conversation, another person walked into the bar, catching both their attention. And no, it wasn't our redhead, but some punk-looking girl who didn't seem happy seeing a complete stranger sitting inside the bar, since this place was not meant for outsiders. Okay, sure, a literal child just walked into a bar and all, but what's up with that stupid man beside her who had his whole face covered up with his hoodie? That's just dumb. Well, turns out Blonde knew about these people, so he welcomed all of them to the bar. That is when one of the members from the squad suddenly spotted a cutie sitting in front of him, and he wasn't able to resist her charm, resulting in him blurting out how it's been a while since he's seen such a cute girl. And of course, that rubbed the tiny little gremlin beside him the wrong way, because clearly he was saying she wasn't cute. As for our Blonde, he introduced the four to our girl while apologizing to her for their rude behavior. Just then, in the middle of her screaming, the girl suddenly noticed something in the distance, and to our girl's shock, she started screaming while pointing at her for some reason. Seeing that finger aimed her way, Zhanya got a little nervous and asked what was going on. Well, turns out she wasn't pointing at our girl, but the tasty little snack sitting beside her, because that thing was her afternoon snack that she bought with her own money, and someone had the nerve to steal it from her. Yeah, Xiaoya knew she was cooked. Touching the snack of a crazy girl basically meant a death sentence if she didn't explain herself fast enough. But lucky for her, Blonde stepped in and apologized to the girl, saying how it was him who offered that thing to her, so it wasn't her fault, and promised to buy her a new one. Yeah, one wasn't going to cut it anymore, so to compensate for her emotional damage, now she needed 2 slices. Just then, the squad's Romeo suddenly showed up, launching the girl into the air with his butt just to get closer to Xiaoya, and went straight into his charming mode, trying to rizz up our girl, and introduced himself as Ma Wenyu and asked for our girl's name. Before she had a chance to answer, another voice came from the side, telling the man her name was Zhang Xiaoya. This of course surprised our girl, but the creep wasn't done. This guy had her entire profile memorized as he started telling the gang how she was a student in a number 4 high school and was in senior division 2nd class, student number 44. No participation in any clubs, no records of disciplinary problems. A student without any outstanding qualities. And after he was done laying her whole life in front of everyone, he asked the girl what was a student such as herself doing in a bar during the weekends, and not just any bar but one that was not even open to outsiders in the first place. Yeah, Xiaoya had no idea how she was supposed to react to all of that. She did not know whether she should be impressed or creeped out by the fact that this guy somehow knew everything about her. As for Four Eyes, he didn't care how she felt and demanded the girl answer his question. Seeing how all of these clowns were making the girl uncomfortable, Blonde tried to ease the situation, telling them to take it easy on the newbie, explained how it was their boss who brought the girl here, after which he announced that if everything went well, she was going to be assigned as a new member of their team. Well, let's just say not everyone in the squad was happy about that news, and neither was our girl because she never agreed on joining anyone for anything. But before she could say anything, Four Eyes received an urgent notification on his phone. Turns out, a Grade 1 rote beast was spotted in Area 27-8, and their squad was being called in to handle it. And clearly, they weren't happy about this because they just got back from Area 15 and were already completely worn out. But Blonde reminded the four how they were still trainees who needed as much field experience as possible to grow stronger. And since it was just a Grade 1 monster, it wasn't even going to be that difficult, and suggested they start moving their butts. All of a sudden, Tomboy thought of something, and that something also involved our girl for some reason. So she grabbed onto her hand, and before our girl could even understand what was going on, she sprinted out of the place with our girl dangling behind her. As for Blonde, seeing her run out of the place with our girl, he tried to stop her, but it was already too late. Seeing him acting like that, Four Eyes asked why was he being so worried about that girl. After all, it was just a Grade 1 monster. Well, turns out he forgot to tell them that girl was as weak as they came, since she still hadn't opened her nodes yet, but Four Eyes was sure she was going to be alright. After all, she had Ma Wenyu and Ning Ning with her, so a mere Grade 1 rot monster won't even be able to lay a finger on her. But still, Blonde was curious to know why he didn't go with them, so Four Eyes told him about a test he needed to take next week, which was why he needed to study. Cut to the Area 27-8 in the northern part of the city, and our trio had finally arrived at their destination. But even after looking around for a bit, they weren't able to find this so-called Grade 1 rot. As for our girl, yeah, the poor thing was exhausted, and that surprised Ning Ning, so she asked if she was specialized in techniques instead because her stamina was terrible. Our girl tried telling the stupid little girl she was just a squishy little girl and hadn't unlocked her powers yet. But before she could, they got interrupted by Wen, who told the girls to get on their guard because he can sense the creature closing in on them. Hearing that, Ning Ning got all fired up to start the hunt, unlike our girl who was still trying to explain to the two she wasn't cut out for this kind of stuff. But just like earlier, they completely ignored the girl and activated that same second dimension or something, and before our girl knew it, everyone around them disappeared. Seeing her making that face, Ning Ning explained to the girl about this technique. So basically, this is called the inner world, where people with low spiritual powers cannot enter. She further told our girl how the inner world was like a projection of the real world, where any damage dealt to the surroundings is confined to this realm only and won't affect the outside world. Yeah, that explained to our girl about that massive hole in her wall which magically fixed itself the next day. That damage was actually caused in the other world, not the real world. But she still had one question, so she asked Ning Ning if the reason they were fighting these monsters inside this dimension was because they didn't want to cause damage to the real world. Well, that was partially true because they really didn't care about the damage to the real world. The real reason was because 1. They didn't want to have to deal with explaining to the civilians what happened to the place, and 2nd, and the most important reason, was because Ralt beasts mostly lurk inside this world and rarely show up in the real world, meaning right now they were standing inside a world filled with those monsters. Yeah, that wasn't good for our girl. She barely managed to escape with her life from that one bone-faced monster, and now she literally got dragged into a dimension filled with those things. So she tried telling the two how this was a bad idea, but it happened again. The 3rd time she tried telling the two how in her current condition even a paper cut was enough to end her. Wen cut her halfway through, assuring the girl he was here to protect her so she didn't need to worry about anything. Oh boy, before our girl even had the chance to process his words, that creature suddenly appeared behind her. But just as it was about to snap her in two, something shot past her face and that startled our girl. Before her brain could even catch up to what had just happened, a loud explosion rang out behind her. Surprised, she turned around and saw a ghostly figure slammed into a crater in the wall. And this right here is the same thing they came here to hunt. As for our girl, she did the only sensible thing and jumped straight at Ning Ning, begging the girl to save her. As for Wen, the kid wasn't happy seeing how that creature almost ended his potential waifu just when he promised the girl he was going to keep her safe. And because of that, he was fully intending on punishing the monster thoroughly and summoned 2 of his ghostly familiars. Well, way to ruin the whole cool guy moment, because after giving that cool speech, he turned towards the 2 ladies with that dumb face, asking if they felt chills down their spines, hearing him say those cool things. As for the monster, the thing was far from done and it slowly started to pull itself out of that massive crater. Seeing how the creature still had some fight left in him, Wen got ready to use it as his latest punching bag to show off in front of the girls. And with that noble thought in mind, he turned one of his ghostly friends into a disc and leaped into the thing. After which he basically told the 2 girls adios because he was going to take care of that thing now. Seeing him flying like that, our girl was left in awe as she started shaking Ning Ning, asking if she was seeing what she was seeing. The girl, however, completely annoyed by her constantly sticking to her, pushed her away. But still, since she didn't have anything better to do, she decided to explain to the girl how Wen's ability worked. But before she could, she noticed our girl shrieking for some reason, and that really started to annoy Ning because this girl was clearly not cut out for this line of work. Little did she know, Xiaya was actually trying to warn her of the massive danger that was slowly creeping up on her from the back. But since she was so terrified, she wasn't even able to get the words out of her mouth. But what she didn't know was that Ning Ning is a certified badass, and she already knew about that creature's presence before our girl even saw it. But there was something strange about this monster because unlike a regular rope monster, she wasn't able to sense any spiritual power from the thing. So she turned towards Wen, and turns out it was the same story with his creature. Somehow it was suppressing its spiritual power, but since their job was just to eradicate these things, she didn't think much of it. And she kicked the massive body of the creature straight into the air, and to our girl's surprise, she leaped right after the thing to carve her spear through the monster's body, and just as she got in range, delivered a devastating slash on the creature's stomach, sending it crashing down, and the thing got buried into the ground. And now it was time for the finishing blow, and since the creature was already trapped and unable to move, she turned her massive spear around and came crashing down on the thing like a meteor, and drove the massive weapon through the monster's back with tremendous force, causing shockwaves to form all around them. And that was it. That's all it took for her to take out a grade 1 rot monster. But then another strange thing started happening, because unlike a regular rot monster, this creature's body started turning into some kind of liquidy mess, and apparently it looked so disgusting that our girl immediately started climbing on her weapon to get away from it. Curious, she turned towards Wen, who was also done with his monster, and asked how were things with that creature, and the answer was the same. It also turned into this gooey, slimy mess after it was taken out. Meanwhile, our girl was just relieved that they managed to take out those monsters, so she came out of her hiding spot, asking the 2 if they can go back now. But just then, in the middle of that, she failed to notice a projectile that was coming straight at her neck. By the time the 3 noticed the thing, it was already too late to do anything, so both of them froze, realizing they dropped their guard and messed up. But just then, in that last second, as the thing was about to hit our girl, a hand appeared and managed to stop the thing. Turning to her savior, our girl saw an old drunkard or something who was scolding the 2 for dropping their guard in the middle of a fight, all while complaining about his terrible hangover. Yeah, that was when they turned towards our girl to check up on her, only to see some kind of a quill lodged into her neck that the projectile launched at the girl. Terrified, both trainees started panicking, with Ning Ning telling Wen to quickly heal the girl. but turns out he can't because his power can only cure external wounds, not poisons that are inside one's body. Seeing them both arguing, the old man told both of them to settle down and instructed them to take the girl back to the bar so they could have someone by the name of Nangong take a look at her. But little did they know, the whole thing was being quietly observed by two individuals from the shadows, and one of them wasn't exactly happy with how those two rope monsters performed against those trainees. But the second man assured his partner not to worry because with the data he managed to gather, he was sure he could easily make grade 2 beasts next time with a few adjustments. But that wasn't the important thing here. The main thing they managed to gain from this whole test was that girl and how her body was reacting to that poison. Yeah, his partner knew exactly what he was trying to say, and he himself was looking forward to what was about to come, and since that girl was so interesting, the man asked the hooded one if he wasn't planning on going after those two to secure that girl for themselves. Yeah, no. The hooded guy reminded the man about that old man with those kids by the name of Mad Dog Lin, because the outcome of the battle won't be pretty for them if they engage those guys with him around. Cut back to the bar, and like always, Ning Ning kicked the door open with her leg while screaming for Zhao Lei to come out. An angry blonde appeared from the kitchen, reminding the girl he was the one who needs to pay for those locks and suggested she use the door like a regular human being. But then his eyes landed on our girl, who was lying unconscious on the sofa, with Ning Ning telling him how the girl got poisoned during their mission. This surprised Blonde because this was the first time he heard of a grade 1 monster possessing poison abilities. His eyes landed on Old Man Lin, and that surprised him even more because something like this happened while he was around. Well, the old man didn't want to admit he was hammered at the time, so he just told the kid to call for Nangong so he could take a look at the girl. Well, turns out Nangong was out on a mission with Squad 1 and won't be back for a while now, meaning the girl had to endure the pain. And since they were still thinking this was the work of a grade 1 rote monster, they didn't take this matter too seriously either. Just then, in the middle of all that, our redhead suddenly walked into the building and overheard the three talking about our girl. And in the middle of all that, he heard Blonde commenting how their boss would be pissed if he found out what happened to the girl, because he was sure he has a thing for her since he has never shown interest in anyone this much in the past. Yeah, Redhead wasn't happy seeing him spreading those rumors among their coworkers, so he asked the three what were they talking about, and that scared the life out of poor Blonde. With that, Ningnan and Wen started telling him the whole story up until the point she got hit by that poison needle. After they were done, Ji-woo walked up to our girl to check her condition himself, and after placing his hand on her head, he noticed something odd because what entered into this girl's body through that needle wasn't poison, but rather corruption. This revelation shocked the whole room because that thing only works on corpses and has no effect on living humans, which also explained why those two shady men were also showing interest in our girl. As for Ji-woo, he himself had no clue what was going on. But one thing he was sure of was that they didn't have much time because if that corruption spreads through her whole body, she might actually turn into a rope monster. So to prevent that from happening, he prepared to infuse her body with his own spiritual power to try and fight off this corruption from the inside out. And surprisingly, it worked because after a couple of minutes, the girl slowly started to open her eyes. And the first thing she saw after opening her eyes was a massive red head blocking her whole view. And that surprised her a little. Getting up, she asked the kid what happened and how she got here because she had no memory of anything that happened back then. And then her eyes landed on the fool's hand and how dangerously close it was to her lady parts. And the girl literally started tearing up since it was clear to her that this man had his hand on her stomach this whole time while she was asleep. And in her panic, she instinctively swung her hand and slapped the hell out of our Chad in front of his coworkers, who was only trying to help the stupid girl. But lucky for her, Redhead was a very patient guy, so he didn't immediately lash out at the girl. Instead, he told her not to move too much just yet because her body was still far too weak for her to be swinging her hand like that. Seeing the misunderstanding, Blonde stepped in, explaining to the girl what really happened and how their boss was just trying to help her. Ming-9 also chimed in, telling the girl about the whole incident, how she got stung by a corrupted beast and lost consciousness, so their boss was sharing his spiritual energy with her to cleanse her body. With the misunderstanding cleared, our girl turned towards Ji-woo with those puppy eyes and apologized for slapping him moments ago. But our hero didn't care. Instead, he told the girl she wasn't out of the woods just yet because with his power, he was only able to slow down the corruption in her body, after which he started to leave, reminding the girl at the end of the day, she was just a normal human being, and her body won't be able to withstand an excessive amount of spiritual power. So once the power he shared with her runs out, the corruption inside of her will continue making its way towards her brain. But there was still a chance if she wanted to save herself, and that was by accepting the awakening and becoming a cultivator like them. After which her body would use her own spiritual power to purge the corruption from her body completely. But if not, then he warned the girl she would become the first human in history to be corrupted while still alive and die. Yeah, that was a terrifying thought for our girl, so he gave the girl the choice to decide her fate herself, telling her he would be waiting in the basement if she decided to change her mind. Shaya, however, still refused to go down that path and asked if there really wasn't another way. But Wen and Ningning assured the girl there was nothing to be afraid of, saying how it's just like a game where you kill monsters to gain experience and grow stronger. Our girl, though, wasn't convinced. She still had a ton of questions, like how does one open their nodes? Will it hurt? Will she be forced to fight dangerous monsters because that would be a death sentence for someone as weak as her? So basically a whole lot of things. Just then, all their attention got drawn towards another person who was asking the reason for all this noise. Turning around, they saw Four Eyes walking out of his room, who was showing surprise that they were back so soon from their mission. Just then, the weird hoodie guy also walked into the building and saw the whole gang gathered around our girl, which surprised him, but even more surprising was Ning Ning screaming at him for some reason because he was nowhere to be seen when they arrived back with our unconscious girl. Next panel, bam, a fist landed on her head, stopping her from saying anything else. Turning around, she saw Old Man Lin scolding her for saying that to Sean because it was he who came looking for him and informed him of what was going on. Otherwise, he would have never made it to the scene on time. By then, Four Eyes came out of his room and was asking what was going on. Fast forward, after a long explanation to the two of them, they were seen asking our girl the reason for her hesitation about awakening her powers. Well, the answer was simple. She was afraid of those things and didn't want to fight them. To that, Old Man Lin assured the girl not to worry about that because no one was forcing anyone to do anything here. This surprised our girl, and the gang also confirmed it, saying how all of them were willingly going out to fight those creatures and could stop or refuse to go at any time they wanted. Old Man Lin, however, was really starting to get impatient with the girl taking so long to decide and suggested she head to the basement immediately because guess what? Her corruption was already becoming visible to the naked eye, meaning she didn't have much time left. Seeing this, our girl immediately sprinted towards the basement to get started with whatever they were planning, and doing her cute little panic run, made it straight to the basement. Opening the door, she saw Jiwoo standing in the distance, asking if she finally made up her mind and told her to sit inside the circle in the middle of the room. Our girl did as told and quietly sat in the middle of the thing, but when she looked up to ask if the process was going to hurt, she froze, seeing a ripped, shirtless Jiwoo slowly walking up to her. Oh boy, she completely blue-screened seeing the sight before her because that was the last thing she was expecting in a situation like this, so she quickly turned around, asking Redhead what was he doing, taking off his clothes in front of her. Woo, staying calm at her stupidity, told the girl to take this matter seriously, instructing her to calm her mind because this was not the time to let her thoughts wander. Yeah, it was easier said than done, after all. She was in the basement of a complete stranger who was taking off his clothes in front of her for some reason. Just then, she heard the sound of something dripping behind her, so she turned around to see what it was, and upon turning to the source, she saw some kind of black liquid leaking out of a massive hole on Jiwoo's chest. As for the man, he wasn't even reacting to anything and was telling the girl to calm herself because he was about to start the ritual. With that, he placed his hand on the massive hole to start the process, and something started to appear from within his chest. Seeing that massive thing coming out of his body, Shanya froze because she had never seen anything like it in her life. Turns out it was the same scroll Blonde was telling her about not too long ago, the one that held both the powers and the evils of the world sealed inside it. But our girl was more shocked about how someone can store an item like that inside of their own body. Not giving her any time to ask any questions, Jiwoo told the girl to go back to the circle because he was about to start the ritual. After the girl was ready, he started tracing something on the scroll with his finger while telling the girl this was the last power stored inside of this scroll, and now it was going to be hers. After which, he squatted in front of her and told the girl to focus. Yeah, how was she supposed to focus with a half-naked man slowly closing in on her face? But then she heard Jiwoo saying something completely unexpected as he told the girl this must be fate because even the powers she was about to inherit are exactly the same as hers. Surprised, our girl tried asking what he meant by that, but by then Jiwoo had already started the ritual. Just as he placed his finger on her head, some kind of bright light started to seep out of her mind, and the next thing our girl knew, that light started spreading everywhere, and that scared our girl, so she asked Jiwoo what was going on. She tried getting up, but the magic circle under her activated as tiny blue flames started to appear from it, with that light slowly starting to wrap all around her. As for Jiwoo, the kid didn't even bother giving her another look. He turned around, picked up his shirt, and prepared to leave the terrified girl to deal with the rest herself, and just before heading out, he told the girl to come find him upstairs after she regains consciousness. And that clearly didn't help the girl in her situation, and it was just as he had said. She suddenly lost consciousness and found herself drifting in endless darkness with a voice constantly telling her to wake up. Next panel, and she snapped her eyes open and found Redhead standing over her, and for some reason he looked panicked as he told her to get up. Turns out this Redhead isn't the one we know of, but the one from her dreams. And for some reason he was talking about some kind of war that was going on. Following after him, she came to the edge of a cliff and saw a whole city being burned to the ground as soldiers charged in to destroy everything. And the ones charging in the city, according to Redhead, were their soldiers. All this was way too confusing for our girl, not to mention for some reason she wasn't able to speak, nor was she in complete control over her own body. As for the Redhead, he told the girl they finally managed to reach Jarog's city, so she needed to pull herself together. That name surprised our girl, but that wasn't even the most shocking part here, because after that, the kid called her by the name of Zhang Zia, the Grand Marshal of this army, and told the girl to pull herself together because this was no time to be dozing off. Just then, another voice came from the side, asking what were they doing here. Turning around, she saw a green-haired man walking up to them while asking what was she doing in this place, because she was supposed to be preparing their subsequent siege plans. Redhead assured the man there was no need to worry, and calling him King Zhou, told the man they were just getting ready to do just that. Okay, so this part was a little confusing, but from what I can make of it, this green-haired man is the emperor of the Shang dynasty, and the city they were attacking was also one of his, which made absolutely no sense to our girl since why would someone attack his own city? But then in the middle of her thinking, she suddenly started feeling hazy as her eyes got heavier and she began to lose consciousness. Next panel, and she opened her eyes once more, and this time she was back in her original body in her own world. Getting up, she noticed something soft and squishy sleeping on her stomach, and that surprised the girl. As for the creature, it kind of looked like a dog, but not like any dog she had ever seen in her life. Cut to the outside, and the gang was seen killing time playing cards, with Ningning asking Wen if he has any clue what kind of power she might awaken. Wen answered by reminding her that a person's personality heavily influenced their abilities. Because of that, he was betting she would turn out either as a technique cultivator or a soul cultivator. And since Ningning awakened the abilities of a barbaric warrior, she immediately figured he was basically calling her personality trash in a roundabout way. Just then, the door to the place opened up, with our girl walking in with that furball in her arms. Seeing that she was finally awake, Ningning got all excited and asked how was she feeling. That was when her eyes dropped on that ball of cuteness in her arms. And wait, maybe I was wrong. It looks more like a baby deer or a moose than a dog here. Well, whatever it was, it had Ningning bouncing on her feet as her heart practically exploded from how cute the little creature was. Completely overwhelmed, she asked Shanya if she could hold it for just a second. But then another voice came through, advising her not to do that. Turning around, they saw Redhead telling the girl it was better not to wake the creature just yet because she still needed to master her control over her spiritual power, meaning there was a very high chance that the thing might go berserk if she wasn't able to control it properly. And just before leaving, he instructed our girl to come find him in the bar tomorrow because he wanted to teach her some basic ways to use her spiritual power. Well, it turned out that was a big deal. Redhead almost never showed this much interest in anyone. On top of that, Shanya was probably the only person he ever offered to teach personally. Seeing them making that face, our girl asked if everything was alright. Ningning explained how their boss was acting way too out of character around her because they, along with other newbies, were all trained by seniors from other squads, which makes her the only disciple their boss was willing to take under his wing, and that was a really big deal. But Four Eyes told the group not to overthink it because the reason was pretty obvious why he was showing so much interest in that girl, since she is basically the only person who automatically summoned a soul beast the moment she awakened, meaning she possessed extraordinary talent, which was why their boss wanted to train her personally. Wen agreed because he himself was a summoner, and for him it took over a week to summon just a weak ghost creature, but she managed to summon a whole beast without even trying. All this was way too much for our girl because in her head she wasn't anything special, but everyone around her was making her sound like some kind of prodigy. So she reminded the gang what she said earlier, she wasn't going to be using her powers to fight any monsters, but Four Eyes pushed back on that idea as he told the girl, despite everything, she still needed to experience actual combat a few times, because if she ever got attacked again, she had to know how to actually use her powers to fight those monsters. And since she would be a part of their squad for now, he suggested all of them properly introduce themselves. But our girl suddenly remembered something she needed to ask of Redhead, so she turned towards the man only to realize he had already left the building. This shocked the girl because moments ago he was standing right there, and now he is nowhere to be seen. Ningning told the girl not to worry since she would be seeing him tomorrow for their training anyway. And since that part was out of the way, Four Eyes prepared to properly introduce everyone. First up was Ning Ning, their weapon cultivator who inherited the powers of Yin Jiao. As for her personality, he told the girl she may look like a delinquent, but in reality she was a really sweet kid. Oh, and also the most important thing about her. She dropped out of school, but according to Ning Ning, she didn't drop out. The teachers there just ran out of things to teach her. Moving on, second was our Romeo, Ma Wenyu, a soul cultivator who inherited the power of the Ma clan. As for his greatest achievement in life, he had been rejected by girls a total of 107 times. Then came the weird hoodie guy Sean, a technique cultivator who inherited the power of Lei Zhenzi. As for him, he did not talk much, but he was a very reliable teammate. And finally, it was Four Eyes' turn. His name is Huang Yunjie, a student and a soul cultivator who inherited the power of Huang Tianhua and is the acting captain of Squad 7. Surprised, our girl asked what he meant by acting captain. Four Eyes explained to the girl that their captain is an extremely unreliable person, so he is mostly doing all the work from dispatching to planning the members' training. And according to Four Eyes, it was exactly because of his carelessness that she got hit by that needle in the first place. Because if it were any other squad captain, they would have never made such a rookie mistake. Just then, they heard Ning Ning asking if anyone had seen their captain, because he had been missing for quite some time now. Well, turns out Four Eyes knew, so he told the gang how while they were playing cards, he quietly swiped some liquor from the counter and slipped out of the building. Ignoring that, he told our girl it was now her turn to introduce herself. She kept it short and told them her name was Xiaoya, a student. As for her powers, she had no clue. Surprised when asked if their boss never told her anything before starting the ritual. The answer was a no, but she was still curious about the 3 types of abilities, so she asked the gang to explain how they work. Our Romeo stepped up to enlighten the girl and started telling her about the main difference between the 3. First up was weapon cultivators. As the name implies, they rely on their weapon and strength to deal with their enemies. Second was mages, basically glass cannons. They can toss out all sorts of spells at will, but their physical fitness is trash, so much so that they'll be gasping for air after a few steps. And finally, soul cultivators, also known as summoners, who can summon soul beasts to fight and can also use some spells exclusively related to spirits and summoning. Well, it turns out, according to the gang, his explanation was trash, and that made the poor guy angry because he was trying his hardest to rizz up this girl and they were completely ruining his moment. Ignoring his screaming, Four Eyes decided to take matters into his own hands and told the girl that basically he wasn't wrong, but at the same time, his explanation wasn't completely right either. And the reason being, cultivators such as them are capable of all 3 combat styles but mostly master only one, and the path they choose entirely depends on what type of cultivator they are. So basically, our girl can also go for the other 2 styles, but since she awakened as a summoner, he suggested she should stick with that because that path would be easiest for her to take. Just then, in the middle of their discussion, our girl suddenly turned towards the weird hoodie guy, and for some reason he quickly turned his head around. Yeah, that confirmed our girl's suspicions because this whole time he had been stealing glances at her, and she was somehow able to tell it even though the guy had his entire face hidden. Before she could call him out on that, they heard our favorite blonde's voice, who sounded relieved, seeing our girl back to 100%. Well, whatever he was doing was working because he had both beauties drooling the moment he walked into the room. Oh yeah, the guy had gone all out and prepared a full tea party for the group to welcome Xiaoya into the squad. Man, who needs cheesy pickup lines? All you need is good cooking skills, and you can get any girl in the world. Next chapter, and our girl was basically in heaven with just one bite of the tasty treat. As for Ning Ning, the girl was bragging how their Xiaolei is the best cook out there. Just then, our girl noticed weird hoodie staring at her again for some reason, so she offered him a slice of cake. This surprised the kid, and I don't know if he was trying to keep his face hidden or he has something against our girl, but he completely ignored our girl and walked out of the building, after which he violently slammed the door shut for who knows why. This surprised our girl, so she asked the rest of them if she did something wrong. When assured our girl it wasn't her. The guy was just weird and seriously lacking in manners. Just as he said that, Four Eyes grabbed him by his ear and started scolding him for talking bad behind his comrade's back. He apologized to our girl for everything that happened to her and how she was injured during that mission, promising to teach this brat a proper lesson. This of course surprised Wen because he wasn't the only one who messed up during their mission. On top of that, it was Ning Ning's idea to take the newbie. He was just tagging along. But Four Eyes wasn't even listening, and just before dragging him away into another room, he instructed our girl to focus on her studies and not to fail her next week's test like last time. Our girl was literally trembling at that, wondering just how much does that guy know about her. As for Ning Ning, the girl apologized to our Chad for not listening to her back then and dragging her out to such a dangerous place. But before she could say anything, she heard our girl calling out her name. Surprised, she turned to see her, only for our girl to shove a slice of cake straight into her cute little mouth to shut her up. Turns out our girl wasn't blaming anyone for anything that happened and told the girl it was an interesting experience for her, which also gave her the chance to get to know everyone better and she made new friends. Unable to hold it in anymore, Ning Ning tried to hide how happy she was hearing Shan Ya call her a friend as she told her how she was afraid she might keep a grudge against them after waking up. But then both of them remembered they were supposed to keep the little guy asleep, so they turned to see if it was fine. Xiaolei assured the girl the thing was okay, explaining how normal noise or shaking won't wake it up as long as it doesn't come into contact with a significant amount of spiritual power. This hyped Ning Ning up as she asked the blonde if it was okay for her to touch that creature if she keeps her spiritual power suppressed, and the answer was a yes. Next panel, and she was hugging the ball of cuteness, and the soft fluffy feeling she was getting from the thing was just too much to handle. Xiaolei, however, advised her not to overdo it because there was still a chance she might accidentally awaken the creature up, so the girl, with a heavy heart, returned the thing back to our girl, and clearly she wasn't happy about it. Looking at the sleeping creature, Blonde showed surprise because this was his first time seeing a soul beast that couldn't be used freely right after being summoned, and he speculated this thing was probably something incredibly powerful, so much so that even their boss considers it dangerous. And that got our girl wondering how can something so cute and tiny be considered dangerous? Xiaolei, however, was a busy man, so he told the two girls to make themselves at home because he needed to start on dinner. Surprise, our girl asked Ningning if he lives inside this bar as well. Turns out he does, and so does our redhead. Both of them live together inside of this place. In the middle of their discussion, our girl suddenly called Redhead by his real name, and this time Ningning couldn't help but ask why does she refer to him by his true name. After all, he's the leader of this place, and even Zhao Lei calls him bro instead of his true name. For a second, our girl completely froze at that question as the images of our redheaded Chad's ripped body flashed at the back of her head, and in the next second, the girl turned into a blushing mess as she told Ningning she has no idea. But Ningning, on the other hand, already had a theory, and apparently it was one Shan was definitely not going to like. But before she could say anything, our girl turned towards her, asking if she also had to go through all that intense stuff during her awakening ceremony. That question surprised Ningning because as far as she can remember, all she did was sit inside a magic circle with their boss transferring the powers from that scroll to her. That's all. Our girl, thinking she didn't understand what she was saying, tried to be a little more specific and asked if he did anything weird during the ritual, like let's say strip half naked in front of her. Well, of course the answer was no. Yeah, our girl realized she is the only one who got that special treatment in the basement. As for Ningning, the girl immediately put two and two together and realized something really nice happened to her when they were alone down there and asked our girl to give her all the juicy details. But our girl, trying to hide her shame, denied it, saying she was just overthinking things. Like that was going to fool Ningning with that face she was making, so she told the girl there was no use hiding it. After all, this was the first time she saw their boss showing so much interest in someone, and it clearly meant something. Fast forward, and it was already nighttime, with our girl preparing to head out. As for Ningning, the girl offered to walk her back home, since with her new power she was sure to attract some rote monsters on her way. Our girl didn't mind, but she was more worried about the little guy in her arms because her apartment doesn't allow pets. Ningning assured the girl not to worry because normal humans can't see magical beasts. On top of that, she will soon learn how to store her beast in her storage space, so she didn't need to worry about carrying him around everywhere. Just then, both of them heard a voice from the side telling Ningning to go home. Startled, both girls turned towards the source of the sound and saw our hero standing right there, who was telling Ningning she was free to leave because he needed to talk with the newbie in private. Yeah, Ningning didn't even hesitate and sprinted right back into the bar while wishing our girl good luck. After they were alone, our girl asked the kid what was all this about, and why did he ask Ningning to leave when it was clear her life was in danger because of those monsters. But then her eyes landed on the kid's hand, and she froze for a second because turns out the phone that Creep was going through belonged to her. So she immediately asked how long he had been going through it. Our boy, though, not even bothering to explain himself, just tossed the thing back, telling the girl he just saved his number in there. But then upon looking closer, our girl noticed something strange about her phone case, so she asked the kid what was this about. Turns out it was another one of those amulets, and this time the kid told the girl he had this one custom made just for her and instructed her not to lose it or give it away to anyone like last time. After which he simply turned around and prepared to leave while telling the girl to head back home and not to worry about those rot monsters coming after her because that thing was going to conceal her presence from those monsters. As for her broken window, he already took care of it and even set up a formation inside her house which would act like a repellent to keep those monsters from sneaking into her house while she is asleep. That was sweet and all, but our girl still had a question, so she asked the man to stop for a second, and to the kid's horror, she told him about a dream she had been having lately where she sees a red-haired boy who looks just like him and is always crying for some reason. And in that dream, she is always reaching for that man with blood-stained hands, trying to hide his discomfort. The kid told the girl it was probably just another dream, so she should forget about it, but our girl was convinced it felt more than just a dream, prompting the kid to snap at the poor girl as he told her to leave and stop wasting his time. This sudden outburst caught our girl off guard, but unlike before, she wasn't planning on backing away. Instead, she herself got angry at him getting angry and straight up told the kid to stop yelling at her, because she already knows what he did. And to our boy's horror, the girl told him she knows he purposely took off his clothes back in the basement. Not sure how to respond to that, the kid just turned towards her with a confused expression as if he was trying to hide something, but it wasn't helping him because the girl was pissed as she told the kid she already talked with Ningning about her awakening, and she never mentioned anything about him starting to strip in front of her and demanded he explain himself. Yeah, the kid had an explanation for that, alright. So he quickly told the girl he wasn't expecting her to come down so quickly, so it didn't give him enough time to prepare for the ritual, so he had to do all that in front of her. Yeah, no, the girl wasn't buying that dumb excuse, and the kid knew that, so deciding not to make things any more awkward than they already were, he vanished on the spot. That just confirmed our girl's suspicions even more, and she wasn't happy how that jerk just ran away instead of properly apologizing to her, and in her anger, she started stomping her foot while screaming, calling him a pervert, after which she turned around, still fuming, and started walking back to her home. As for the kid, he wasn't that far from her and was quietly observing her from a rooftop, and seeing her make that face, he couldn't help but let out a small chuckle. But then he suddenly froze and calmed himself once more and went back to his usual serious self. Cut to our girl, who was back in her apartment and was still cursing our hero under her breath because this was such a fun day, but it was all ruined because of that one pervert. But then she calmed herself and started thinking about our blonde bartender because he was completely opposite to that red-haired jerk. He was polite, can cook, and even made her many delicious sweets to welcome her to their group. But then, remembering about those delicious snacks, she suddenly froze as a horrifying thought crossed her mind. Coming out of the shower, she slowly started walking up to the scale and silently got up to see the results. And yep, she definitely screwed up, because she ended up devouring one too many of those treats in the heat of the moment without thinking about the consequences, resulting in her weight shooting through the roof. Fast forward to the next day, and our girl was getting ready to head back to the bar, and this time she was determined to make up for yesterday's mistakes. As she stood there with fire in her eyes and her squishy little friend in her hands, telling herself she was going to burn off every extra calorie in her body, and because of that, she didn't even take a bus, she straight up started jogging her way to the place. Fast forward, she arrived at the place and left our hero dumbfounded with the way she was dressed because she looked like she was getting ready to hit the gym or something. But the girl didn't care about him and straight up called him a pervert and demanded he stop staring at her and judging the way she dressed. Our boy, not paying too much attention to that comment, told the girl to just shut up and follow him because he needed to get her body checked up before starting with her training. With that, both of them arrived inside the infirmary where our girl met with a new character, who, with just one glance, told our redhead that the girl had no signs of any kind of mutations, and her soul beast also seemed normal. This man right here is Nan Gong, a doctor for these awakened individuals, and he was asking our girl to give him her hand because he needed to check for any leftover corruption energy that might be lingering inside of her body. But our girl, not even paying any attention to the man, kept staring at his legs for some reason, and that even made the man a little uncomfortable. And since she was so curious about his condition, the man assured the girl not to worry because despite him being on a wheelchair, he was confident in his medical skills. Just then, a hammer came from the side, hitting our girl dead on her head. Surprised, she turned towards the one responsible and saw two identical-looking girls staring at her, with the one in front warning her not to look down on their doctor. Seeing her pouting, the man told the girl it was fine and asked the girls to leave her be because she didn't mean any harm. Turning to our girl, he apologized for his assistant's behavior and asked her once more to reach out her arm so he could start the examination. Our girl did as told, and the man placed his hand on top of her, after which he injected her body with some of his own spiritual power, and that actually stung our girl, so she immediately pulled her arm back in a panic. Surprised, Redhead asked if everything was all right. The girl answered, telling the kid how she just felt something crawling inside of her arm when the doctor touched her hand. This surprised both men because that was the last thing they expected to hear from someone who just awakened her powers. Curious, the doctor asked if she truly felt such a minute flow of spiritual power inside of her body, and the girl nodded yes. Turning towards our Chad, the man commented that he finally understood why he was going this far to train this girl personally. As for the poison inside of her body, there were no traces of anything left inside of her. But our girl was having a hard time believing he could tell that from just a single touch, so she asked if he was really sure. Instead of getting an answer, she was met with another one of the twins' lovely hammer strikes right on her head for doubting their master. As for our hero, he told the two girls to take the girl to the gym, promising he was going to meet them there soon. The girls did as told, and the one with the angry personality called her a woman, telling her to follow them, but her sister reminded the girl she needs to show respect towards people older than her. She agreed and instead called our girl an old hag, saying they should leave now. Yeah, it didn't help. But instead of arguing, our girl quietly followed the two to the gym. After they were alone, our hero asked the doctor what were his thoughts about that girl. The man answered the girl was extremely talented, and if she is trained under him, he was sure she could even surpass even the strongest of cultivators. But that wasn't what our hero was asking, so he reminded the man the real reason he brought that girl to be checked by him. The man knew what he meant, but the answer wasn't as simple as he thought. First of all, for a novice cultivator, the spiritual power she possessed was several tiers higher than what's normal for her level. As for the main thing he wanted to know, her soul was almost indistinguishable from an ordinary human, but there was one surprising thing about her soul. She was missing a significant portion of it, so much so that its volume was even smaller than a newborn baby. So logically speaking, that girl shouldn't even be alive with such a large portion of her soul missing, yet her soul is more stable than an average person's. After finishing his explanation, he asked the kid if he knew something about the girl that he was hiding from the rest of them. But since our hero refused to answer, the man chose not to push the issue any further because he was sure the kid must have had his reasons for keeping it a secret. Cut to our girl, who was showing surprise that this bar also has a gym section and was informed by the twins how this was built by their boss since they needed their bodies to be in peak condition. And since they did their job, the mean one told the girl to do whatever she wants now, since they were leaving. Yeah, well, the problem was, what was she supposed to do since no one told her what exactly she was supposed to be doing here? Cut to the outside, and Redhead was seen waiting for the twins, and once again he heard the mean one commenting they managed to trap that fat lady inside of the gym and asked for permission to blow up that section of the building. Not paying attention to her nonsense, Redhead just turned around, praised them for a good job, and instructed both to go and have fun. Arriving in the room, he called out to the girl to get her started with training, but froze the moment he saw what the girl was doing. And well, the whole room filled with awkward silence for a couple of seconds. And you guys might be wondering, why was this situation so awkward for both of them? Well, simple. The girl was doing exercise to lose fat, and knowing full well about her insecurity, the guy asked her to come find him after she was finished doing her workout. But she asked him to stop because that's not what she was doing. She was just testing out this equipment. But in reality, yeah, she was definitely exercising to lose her weight, and she knew she wasn't fooling anyone. Next panel, and she had finally calmed down and was now getting ready to start with whatever the guy had in mind. But first, he asked the girl to place that reindeer doggy thingy to the side, since they didn't want to accidentally wake the thing up during the process. She obeyed, picked up the thing, and put it down on the cushion. Then came the second step, which was for her to understand the concept of spiritual energy, what it was, and why it was necessary. So to start it off, he explained this spiritual power was basically something that was present inside of every living being and envelops their soul. And after the passing of a person, this spiritual energy separates from the soul and dissipates into the air, where it lingers for a certain period of time before vanishing completely. He further explained how in the past, pretty much any human could tap into this power using a certain cultivation method, but over the course of time, that knowledge was lost due to certain historical events, so now they have to use a different method, which was to inherit the power from the scroll. And only a handful of special individuals can do that, like her, since earlier in that doctor's office, she felt something when that doctor infused her body with spiritual power. That was a sign she was one of those special people. That power also has multiple functions, one being the obvious, cultivators need it as fuel for their techniques, and second, it also acts as a key to unlocking the seal placed upon a person so they could fully utilize this power. Yeah, well, our airhead still had no clue what this man was talking about. Plus, half of that stuff just went over her head, and since that was the case, he decided to just get to the practical part. So he asked the girl to lie down because he was about to infuse her dantian with spiritual energy. Yeah, no, she remembered the last time he did something similar, and his hand was rubbing all over her stomach, and she wasn't exactly eager to repeat that experience. Plus, how was that supposed to help her anyway, since he already did it once and she didn't feel any change in her body? Yeah, well, it was because yesterday she was just a squishy normal human who hadn't awakened yet, but today was different, so he asked the girl to trust him and cooperate. Yeah, no, she refused to go through that same embarrassment like yesterday. That was until Redhead mentioned this process would also burn some excess fat from her body. Next panel, and she was seen lying on the ground red as a tomato, and telling the kid this was just because she wanted to learn how to control her spiritual energy as soon as possible, and definitely not because she thinks she is fat. Well, that wasn't fooling him, but deciding not to argue any further, he just got to business and started injecting his own spiritual energy into her body. But since the girl wouldn't stop squirming, he asked her to relax, otherwise it would take them a whole day before she could feel any spiritual power. Yeah, easy for him to say. He wasn't the one lying on the floor in this awkward situation. Ignoring her complaints, Redhead did something, and Xiaoya suddenly felt something strange crawling inside her body. And that freaked her out, and she began panicking even more, asking the kid what exactly he was doing to her. Redhead told the girl to calm down, since that was just the presence of his spiritual power flowing through her body, and asked her to focus and try to use this sensation to find her own spiritual energy. With no other choice, she closed her eyes and decided to do as the man was saying. And sure enough, following his instructions, she did manage to sense a weird power that felt awfully similar to Redhead's energy, but at the same time completely different. So she told Redhead about it, and his response was immediate as he suddenly stopped, got up, and asked the girl to sit up because the next part was important. Xiaoya obeyed, and following his instructions, she began focusing and guiding that strange power through her whole body. The next step was to gather some of that power at the tip of her finger, and somehow she actually managed to succeed. And that made her ridiculously happy, since this was the first time in her life she actually managed to do something right on the first try. But then that light suddenly vanished, so she asked Redhead if she did something wrong. But the guy answered no. Consistently outputting spiritual power required training, and she was only just getting started, so it was pretty normal. Changing topics, he asked the girl to get ready for the next step because they were about to release another one of her seals, and for that she would need to guide that spiritual power to her forehead. She obeyed, started concentrating, and eventually managed to succeed. But then, in the middle of all that, she didn't even realize she was slowly losing consciousness. After who knows how long, she was seen slowly opening her eyes, and well, she was turned into a little ghost or a floating jelly bean or whatever this thing was supposed to be. And since no one warned her she was going to lose her legs or what she was supposed to do at this point, she began panicking while calling for Redhead to come and save her. That's when one of those glowing orbs suddenly came out of nowhere and crashed right onto her head. Upon looking closer, she saw an image of a familiar fat head covered in red hair inside of the glowing ball. That's when she started paying attention to her surroundings and noticed similar images inside those other orbs as well. And since she had no clue what any of this was about, she decided to copy what people usually do in anime, which was to head into one of those orbs to find out what was going on, hoping that might help her unlock some new powers. Next thing was her POV, as she found herself standing in the middle of a beautiful open plain with majestic mountains surrounding the entire area. And just like how it was in the past, she wasn't in control over her body. All she could do was watch as her body moved on its own. And before she knew it, she found herself undressing the same redhead who was drenched from head to toe after apparently falling into a river. As for Redhead, after getting a hold of his thoughts, he looked at the person's hands, saw what they were doing, and immediately pushed the person away and started screaming, demanding to know why they were taking off their clothes. As for our hero, she still had no clue what was going on, since she was sure that during previous encounters in these visions, this red-headed kid seemed to recognize her, but now he was acting like they never met before. And then poof, her eyes began getting heavier, and she slowly started losing consciousness. Back in the real world, she suddenly snapped her eyes open and found herself in the exact same spot where she had been sitting earlier. So she immediately sprang up to tell Redhead about what she saw in that dream. But to her surprise, the guy was nowhere to be seen. And that annoyed her so much, since that guy just left such a helpless damsel without any explanation in this creepy old room and ran away. But as she got to the door, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her brain and almost fell over. Following that, she heard some strange words echoing inside her mind. And this genius figured this must be her new powers acting up, so she chose not to take it too seriously. Instead, she decided to focus on finding that redhead and forcing him to explain what she saw in that dream, and hopefully make sense of those weird visions. But then she suddenly remembered about her cute reindeer thingy and came running back while apologizing since she had completely forgotten about the little creature. Fast forward to the next day, and the girl was pouting since she wasn't able to find that redhead yesterday after waking up. Still, after seeing it with her own eyes, the kind of work those guys do, she could understand he was probably busy, so she just hoped he was alright. That's when she heard a voice from the side snapping her out of her thoughts. And it was Shishi, cheeky as ever, as she asked our girl if she was thinking about that same redheaded boy from her dreams. Yeah, we'll speak of the devil, because the moment his name left her lips, the dude literally appeared behind her. And to make it worse, he was asking our poor little Zhaya to follow him and was making it sound like they were in some weird relationship. Next panel, and the poor girl was seen pushing the fool out of the class to not make things even worse for herself and her school. But the damage was already done, because everyone, including Shishi, was now convinced both of them were in a relationship. After a while, they were standing outside the school with the girl scolding him for barging into her class without warning. But Redhead had a really good reason. It was because she wasn't answering her phone. Yeah, of course, she wasn't answering her phone. She was in the middle of a class, so her phone was on silent mode. Well, whatever. The guy really didn't care. All he wanted to know was if she practiced her new abilities, and the answer was no, since she was too tired yesterday, so as soon as she got home, she fell asleep. But good news, she managed to learn how to use her soul beast storage, so that was a plus, and surprisingly, it wasn't even that hard. After she understood the concept, she was able to use it without any issues. But there was one thing that was bugging her, and it was this strange dark red collar that appeared around her creature's neck yesterday. Turns out it was Redhead's doing. And that was something of a safety measure since he was afraid she might accidentally awaken the creature, since she still wasn't fully in control of her spiritual energy. That was cool and all, but she was wondering when would she be allowed to wake the thing up. The answer was not anytime soon, since that thing was something way beyond a novice like her. So first they needed to make sure she could properly control her spiritual power, and when the time was right, he would let her know. Eventually they managed to arrive at the spot, but the girl still had no clue why he brought her to this place, so she asked the reason. Well, this was the spot he chose for her training, since he wanted to teach her how to enter the inner world. Plus, there was a level 1 corrupt beast lurking somewhere around this place which she needed to deal with. And no, this time no one was helping her either, so she needed to figure out a way to handle it herself. Like hell she was doing that, so she immediately protested, since she still didn't know the first thing about fighting. So how was she supposed to take on a level 1 beast on her own? Well, that was for her to figure out, but he did assure the girl he would be standing nearby to make sure nothing serious happened. She reminded the guy she hadn't even learned how to use her ability yet, so he basically answered, there was no better teacher than the present, so she should use this chance to learn it. Seeing her making that face, he reminded the girl how she needed to start relying on herself because other cultivators won't always be around to protect her. So if she ever comes across a powerful beast, she should at least know how to protect herself. But first things first, he needed to teach her how to open the inner world, so he asked her to focus all her attention on the tip of her finger. She obeyed. And surprisingly, it wasn't as hard as she expected, since she managed to activate the technique on her first try. As it would have it, that was one of the more advanced techniques for beginners, but this girl managed to master it in seconds, just like she did with the Soul Beast storage, which normally requires weeks of practice. As for the airhead, she had no clue what she had just accomplished and was happily waiting for Redhead's validation, so the guy praised the girl for doing a good job. She had another question. What about the amount of damage dealt inside this realm? Wasn't that going to pile up over time or maybe destroy it? The answer was a no, because for one, this realm was extremely stable and powerful, and two, every day at midnight this realm resets itself, meaning it goes back to 100%, so it doesn't matter how much destruction she causes, it'll just repair itself on its own. But that was the least of her worries right now, so he suggested she try to remember the words she heard ringing through her mind when she woke up yesterday, because that was the only clue for her on how to use her powers. And if not, she better have good stamina since she would need to do a lot of running. That last part about running confused her a little, so she asked what he meant by that. That's when she heard a strange sound from the back. She turned around and found a damned fish with legs straight out of Tokyo Fish Attack crawling out of the fountain. And at that moment, she finally realized what he meant by good at running. Next chapter, and the girl was seen running through the whole place while cursing at our redhead for putting her through all this crap for no reason. And man, she was actually looking hella cute running like that from that overgrown fish as she screamed for the guy to come save her. Yeah, not happening. This was part of her training, so she needed to figure out a way to deal with the thing herself, and suggested she start burning through her brain cells and remember the voice she heard in her head yesterday. Yeah, well that was easy for him to say. He wasn't the one being chased down by an angry fish that was trying to turn her into its next meal. Just then, she heard a loud thud behind her, so she turned toward the sound only to find the creature plummeting toward her at full speed to squish her like a pancake. And then bang! The creature crashed headfirst into the ground, leaving a massive crater in the process. As for the girl, good news. She was still alive and in one piece thanks to our redhead, who reacted in time and moved her out of the way. Looking up, she saw her Prince Charming instructing her to use her heightened senses and reflexes to her advantage, since after awakening her powers, she was more than capable of taking down a level 1 raw monster. Well, that was all the help he could offer, so he tossed the girl to the ground like trash, telling her to use what he just told her and take down that monster. Yeah, well, he could have at least put her down a little more gently. There was no need to literally throw her to the floor. But ignoring her ranting, the guy instructed her to focus on the task at hand. Sure enough, turning to the crater, she saw the thing crawling out of the massive hole, and it looked extra pissed this time. Knowing she had no other choice, she started focusing to remember what those voices said yesterday, and surprisingly, it worked. She somewhat remembered the incantation and the process, and it started to work. A small spark of light began forming at the tip of her finger, and just as she was ready, she activated the ability called Phantom Finger Spirit Charm. And then this happened, absolutely nothing. Like even the fish creature was staring at the girl like, what the heck, woman? What was all that buildup for then? And then boom, she was running all over again while the creature rammed its way through everything that came in their path. Eventually they arrived at an opening where the girl spotted some cover, so she dashed straight into the place to try and hide from the monster. And she was so terrified that she began screaming for our redhead to come save her because she didn't want to do this anymore. As for the monster, it continued to attack the structure to try and break the thing apart to get to the girl. Back with our redhead, who was seen sitting atop a tree watching everything in silence as the terrified girl screamed out his name. But no matter how much she screamed, he never showed up, and that got her wondering if he left her here all by herself. As she was trying to think of a way to survive, the creature on the outside was getting ready to end this little cat and mouse game, and then boom, a massive appendage came shooting into the structure and jabbed itself right next to her skull, scaring the soul out of the poor girl. Looking to the side, she saw the slimy appendage with a razor-sharp pointy edge right next to her face. And at that moment, she realized if this kept up for any longer, she was surely going to end up dead. That's when she heard Redhead's voice from the outside, who was telling her to stay calm and think. That gave her a little bit of courage, and she calmed herself down since clearly panicking wasn't going to get her out of this mess. Looking at her fingers, she noticed a string made out of energy extending from it, and she suddenly realized how this power worked. Just then, the thing used that same appendage to toss that massive thing into the sky, and immediately followed it up with an attack. But by then, Shania was ready. So she started drawing some symbols using that string of energy, and thanks to her quick thinking, she succeeded in creating a barrier between her and the monster. So basically what this skill does is that it allows her to draw different spiritual symbols that serve different purposes, like the one she just used for defense. But the problem was she still wasn't strong enough to maintain those spells for longer periods of time. So she started running to try and remember some more of those symbols through the memories she inherited yesterday after her awakening. And surprisingly, after calming herself down, those memories started coming to her naturally. And using that knowledge, she leaped into the air, and this time cast a binding spell to try and restrict the monster's movements. And it worked. Thin strands of energy shot forward and started wrapping themselves around the fish monster. Although she succeeded in restraining the giant fish, she still needed to finish this with one final powerful attack, so she got ready to cast another spell. And this spell was something called White Lightning. As soon as she was done drawing the symbol, a ball of lightning started crackling in front of her, and she shot that thing toward the sky, and the monster, seeing the attack, realized it was done for. But there was no use trying to escape since the thing came crashing down a moment later, landing directly on top of it. And just like that, the whole place fell silent, as the girl stared at the perfectly roasted body of the overgrown fish. Although she was happy, she still couldn't believe she was able to take down such a massive creature on her own. In her excitement, she turned toward Redhead, asking if he saw what she did, but got startled as the guy straight up slammed her on her face. Turning to the guy, the blushing girl asked what he thinks he was doing getting so close to her all of a sudden, and heard the guy telling her that next time she should make sure the corrupt beast is actually dead before turning her back on it. Surprised, she asked what he was talking about since that thing was clearly dead. That's when she turned around and saw that same appendage dangerously close to her head. Panicking, she asked the guy how was that possible, since clearly that thing was dead. Yeah, well that wasn't exactly true since a raw beast isn't considered dead until its corpse has been completely disintegrated. Suddenly, she noticed that strange green energy leaking from that monster's body, entering into the charm that was given to her by our hero. Redhead explained what she was seeing was the corruption energy being absorbed into that amulet, and that scared her since last she remembered she almost died because of this same energy. Well, true, but this time she shouldn't worry too much about it because previously that energy was injected straight into her body. But this time it went into that amulet, so it won't affect her or her surroundings. That was good and all, but she still had questions like if there are certain types of rot beasts who release this energy, but the answer was a no. All of these beasts possess this energy, which they can absorb in their amulets. Then how come the last two monsters she saw being taken down by Wen and Ning Ning turned into a slushy puddle of white liquid? Yeah, Redhead admitted that was true, which was why he had already assigned someone to investigate the reason behind it because that was something completely new to them. Coming out of the inner world, he instructed the girl to follow him so he could safely escort her back to her school. But he heard the girl asking him to stop, so he asked the reason, and found her thanking him for everything he did for her today, because if it weren't for him pushing her so hard to fight that monster, she would have never been able to overcome her fear of these beasts and learn how to use her powers. And she promised that the next time she encountered one of these monsters, she wouldn't faint from sheer terror and would try her best to fight back. Yeah, the guy didn't even pay attention to her speech and just asked the girl to start moving, which obviously annoyed her a little. Here she was sincerely showing her gratitude, and he couldn't even pretend to listen. Plus, she asked the man that next time he should at least give her a chance to practice her new abilities before throwing her into a life-or-death situation. After a while, they arrived outside the school's main entrance. That's when our girl asked the redhead to stop, and the reason was she wanted to ask about that strange realm where she found herself yesterday with those glowing balls. But the guy had no idea what she was talking about, so he asked her to clarify. So she told him the whole story, how those glowing spheres had blurry images on them, and when she touched one of those balls, she got sucked into it and saw the same red-headed boy there who looked just like him. And no, this time she wasn't just curious. She needed answers since she was certain he knew something about those strange visions of that boy, so she asked what his connection was with him. After a brief pause, Redhead finally spoke up and admitted this was his first time hearing about someone seeing the past memories of a cultivator who previously held that power, but he promised he was going to look into it. As for now, she should just ignore all of that. And more importantly, she was not to tell anyone else about what she just told him. After saying what he wanted to say, he began walking away while instructing her to meet with him in the bar after school, since he wanted to teach her some new techniques. As for the girl, she just stood there wondering what was up with that scary glare just now, and more importantly, why it felt like her heart skipped a beat when the man gave her that look. Just like that, a few hours passed and it was now time to head home. And on her way back, Shishi kept pestering her about our redhead and what was going on between the two of them, but our blushing fool made it clear it wasn't like that. That's when she heard our blondie pointing out how she had trained martial arts since she was a kid and could easily notice when someone was approaching her, but that man managed to sneak up behind her without making a sound, and she was sure he must be hiding something. Yeah, our girl knew she was busted, so she immediately changed topics to a rumor going around about monsters attacking people in their city, and asked Shishi to be careful and stay alert. But Shishi assured the girl there was no need to worry, since if a monster dared to try and attack her, she was going to unleash her ultimate martial arts combo and take down the creature. But then she paused and asked where did she hear such a ridiculous rumor anyway, since this was her first time hearing something like that. Oh boy, this time she was definitely busted, so she quickly came up with some excuse about needing to be somewhere, reminded Shishi not to play hero if she ran into a monster, and got out of there as fast as possible. That only made our blondie even more suspicious of the girl since she had been acting a lot weirder ever since she started hanging around that redheaded kid. Like weirder than normal, because before she used to ramble on about weird dreams and stuff, but now she was talking about monsters and mysterious rumors as well. But she quickly lost interest and instead decided to focus on that redhead instead, since that man definitely has some skill, and she was itching to find out what that man was capable of. Cut to the bar where our girl was informed by Blonde that Redhead went out on some important business, which made no sense to our girl since he was the one who asked her to meet him at the bar at this exact time. Blonde was also aware of that, so he passed on the guy's message, telling the girl to check her phone since he had already sent her the training method for today's lesson. Yeah, that was true. She just missed his message since her phone was on silent mode. so Blonde suggested she use their gym for practicing that technique since that place was quieter than the rest of the bar and hardly anyone goes there. With that, she was seen making her way towards the gym while going through the techniques sent to her by Redhead. That's when she suddenly heard voices coming from a corner. So she peeked out to see what was going on and found the whole gang killing time enjoying coffee on the balcony, but that wasn't the reason her jaw was hanging at the moment. I don't know if you guys noticed it or not yet, but there is a damned massive tree on the other side of the place with a massive plain stretching as far as the eye could see. Well, apparently this place isn't exactly normal. According to Ningning, the bar itself is actually a magical artifact sitting inside some weird alternate dimension, and the entrance could connect to different locations. But before our girl's brain could melt from all that information, the conversation shifted toward her training as Ningning asked whether the redhead had taught her anything useful, and if there was anything she still didn't understand. And the cheerful one explained that Redhead was surprisingly an amazing teacher because while she wasn't exactly an expert yet, she can already control spiritual energy and even use it when needed. The moment those words left her mouth, the entire table went silent because apparently normal people don't learn that in just 2 days. Even the blondie nearly choked on that information because this girl's talent was terrifying, and since that was the case, she asked if she had already learned any actual techniques as well, and our little genius casually replied that she had learned a couple. But speaking of learning new abilities, she complained to all of them about how that red-headed fool threw her into a fight against a corrupted beast before she even had a chance to learn how to use her new powers, complaining how she genuinely thought she was going to die during that fight. But good thing she managed to learn her first technique on time and defeated that rope monster. Yeah, well, for obvious reasons, everyone at the table looked increasingly horrified the longer she talked, because from their perspective, the redhead had basically tossed a complete beginner into a life-or-death battle, and somehow she walked away with new abilities instead. As for our girl, she just sat there completely confused by everyone's reaction. After all, wasn't that how training was supposed to work? Blondie's mind nearly blew up when she heard her say all those things so casually because apparently what Xiaoya just said was the cultivator equivalent of a toddler walking up and solving a university math exam on their first try. Because according to them, the fastest anyone had ever pulled off learning spiritual control and an actual technique was the legendary record held by their squad leader, and even he needed a solid month before he could do what this airhead just casually did in 2 days. Not to mention, she was claiming to have used her first technique in actual combat against a rope monster and even defeated it without any team backing her up. Wen also chimed in since even he had to grind for weeks before learning how to properly control his spiritual energy. That's when Glasses called her out on her story since he was having a really hard time believing it. But our Ningning didn't appreciate the guy bullying little Xiaoya, so she asked him to stop it already. Realizing he might have gone a bit too far, the guy tried explaining himself, but just then he got a ping on his phone with a message about another rope monster appearing in the city. But Ningning refused to join them this time since they were being mean to Xiaoya. Same thing for Wen, who took Ningning's side and refused to help them for calling Xiaoya a liar. This was just getting annoying, so Glasses simply asked Hoodie to get ready since they were going out to take out that monster. Turning towards our girl, Blondie told her she completely trusts her. Plus it was getting dark outside, so she offered to walk her back home. But our girl told her it was fine. Well, apparently, since her parents were currently abroad for work, she felt lonely at home, so she was thinking of spending some more time here and finishing her homework before going back to her house. Well, Blondie had no objections to that, but there was one condition. She was going to help her with her homework, plus she would have to promise to come hang out with them at the bar whenever she had time. Same thing for Wen, who was also offering to help, but was immediately shut down by Ningning, since he wasn't exactly known for his academic achievements. And our girl was seen walking out of the bar with Wen, with the girl in the back reminding Wen to make sure Shonya gets home safely. Plus, she warned the fool not to even think about making a move on the innocent little girl on the way, otherwise she was going to break both his hands. As for our girl, she herself was lost in thought since Ningning was extremely smart, and she managed to explain things in a way even she could understand easily. And thanks to that, she managed to finish her homework in no time, plus the way she explained things to her was even better than her own teacher. After a bit, both of them were seen making small talk, with our girl showing surprise at how her life changed so much in such a short amount of time. Just yesterday, she was a normal high school student, but now she was spending time with cultivators and training to fight monsters. She also had a question for Wen since all of them were always running around fighting monsters, so she was wondering if that didn't interfere with their daily lives and studies. The answer was a no. Well, at least for him, because he didn't have to worry about school since his sister Mary was the one who taught him everything. Surprised, our girl asked who he was talking about. Well, apparently our little Wen grew up in an orphanage where he learned how to read and write. That part surprised our girl, so she apologized but was told not to apologize since according to Wen, he had never felt in his life that there was anything wrong about being an orphan. Plus, Sister Mary raised him like family. She was always kind to him, and now thanks to our redhead who was paying him handsomely, he was able to ease his sister's financial burdens, so he was genuinely happy. And then of course he had to ruin this emotional moment by blurting out whether she was already head over heels for him after hearing his backstory. With that, they finally arrived at the place where our girl offered to make him a cup of tea, but Wen refused since he needed to head back to the bar tonight for his training. And just before leaving, he relayed a message from our blonde bartender that she needed to get into the habit of meditating, since not only would it restore her spiritual power, it was also good for relieving fatigue. Next panel, boom, she was back in her room and immediately plopped onto the bed because she was absolutely exhausted. Plus, her whole body was feeling sore after the kind of running she had to do to take down that monster. But she also knew she couldn't slack off. She needed to start learning that meditation technique. So she got into position to start the process. And surprisingly, the instructions were pretty straightforward. All she had to do was calm her mind, not think about anything, which she was already a professional at, and quietly feel her surroundings. So she did, closed her eyes and completely shut down her brain. Well, I guess she shut it down a little too well because at the very next second she nodded off and dropped face first onto her phone. With that, she was seen slowly opening her eyes. And what do you know, she was back into that ghostly form in that dark space with all those orbs hovering all around her. But unlike last time, she was actually excited to see this place, so she began flying around to explore the area. And since there was nothing special in that place, she decided to just enter one of the orbs like last time. With that in mind, she started flying towards one to see what was inside. And boop, got a bump on her head as she crashed headfirst onto the thing. As soon as that happened, she opened her eyes back in the real world. Surprised, she sat up, wondering what went wrong this time, since not only was she unable to enter that sphere, she also got tossed back to reality. But not giving up, she got ready to start meditating once again to go back and try one more time. So she lay on her back, closed her eyes and began concentrating, but a damn mosquito in the room kept buzzing all around her, which was making it impossible to focus. And it got so bad that she started flailing her arms around trying to shoo the thing away. Fed up with everything, she decided to just give our redhead a call to see if he could tell her something. But then she remembered something and immediately decided not to do that since that guy would just grunt at her and tell her not to enter those orbs. With that option also gone, she plopped back on her bed and started wondering what could have gone wrong this time or if she did something she wasn't supposed to. Recalling the first time she entered one of those orbs, she remembered how she broke through her power seal when Redhead infused spiritual energy into her body. So with that in mind, she began concentrating to try and replicate that feeling, and was immediately hit with a splitting headache. Not just that, she even noticed red liquid coming out of her nose, and that freaked her out so much that she immediately ran to her bag, pulled out a tissue, rolled it up, and shoved it into her nose. With that somewhat patched up, she wondered what went wrong this time, and if her mana concentration wasn't strong enough, and if so, she would first need to meditate to recover it, which wasn't possible in this situation. So in the end, she decided to just take a shower and call it a night. But before that, there was another important thing to take care of, which was to do a quick emergency weight test to see how many pounds she lost after today's shenanigans. Cut to the next morning, and she was in her class, and surprisingly today, she felt a lot better. Plus, her mind was noticeably sharper, which made it quite easy for her to follow the lesson. She also noticed this strange change about her, so she asked what was going on and slipping back to her usual gremlin self. Asked if by any chance the reason she was working so hard today was to impress her red-headed boyfriend. But our girl immediately told her to stop spreading nonsense because how was her working a bit harder in her studies going to benefit her in any way? Well, I don't know, because that guy was standing right at the door and had been staring at her since school started. Cut to the park, and Shoya was seen laying into our boy for barging into her school again, even though she specifically asked him not to do that. But then again, he had that same old excuse he wasn't able to get through on his phone. Yeah, this time she wasn't buying that lame excuse. Plus, why did he bring her back to this park? Because she wasn't in the mood for fighting another one of those monsters. Well, apparently today he had a different kind of training in mind for her because yesterday she gained enough power to defeat a first-class rot monster. Today they would be working on her evading and survival skills. Yeah, well, our girl reminded the fool that part should have come before yesterday's training. Plus, why was he asking her to start running? Because she couldn't see any rot monsters in sight. Redhead clarified today she won't be facing off against a rot monster. Seeing him getting closer, Shanya started getting nervous, but mustering up her courage, she asked then, who exactly was she fighting? Boom, he got super close to her face, after which he explained today her opponent was going to be him. The moment those words hit her eardrums, she immediately started running to get away from the psychopath. But our redhead assured the girl he wasn't going to use his full power. He'll just use one of his fingers and move as slow as he could. Yeah, like that was reassuring because just look at that tree, what that one finger did to it. But it was like the guy wasn't even listening to her words. He kept going how she was to try and survive his attacks for 10 minutes or escape the park and she'll pass the test. Yeah, right, 10 minutes, she can't even handle a 5-minute jog. And he was asking her to run for her life for a straight 10 minutes. Well, that was her problem right there, since not all road monsters she comes across would be like the one she encountered yesterday, who only rely on brute strength, so she needs to work on her evasion and blocking and learn how to use the environment to her advantage to take down her opponents. After he was done speaking, he signaled the girl to start running. She tried telling him to stop because she wasn't ready yet, but the guy refused to listen, so she was forced to use her shield to try and stop him. But according to Redhead, that sloppy shield was like wet tissue paper for him. Well, what he didn't know was that our girl was also ready, so she immediately cast another talisman, which once again he also easily managed to dodge using his super speed. But by then, our girl had already sprinted off towards the exit of the park. Watching the girl running in such a ridiculous manner, he was impressed since her reaction speed was significantly faster than yesterday. Well, that didn't mean he was going to go easy on her, so he began chasing after her once more. Realizing she couldn't just outrun him, our girl began thinking of a plan to slow the guy down to escape. But first she needed to stay calm because panicking was clearly not going to help her in this situation. But just then, as she was coming up with a plan, Redhead suddenly appeared right next to her, commenting she shouldn't zone out during a fight. And the next thing she saw was his finger coming straight for her face. And this time his attack managed to connect as our girl wasn't fast enough to dodge on time. But then he looked closer and noticed that same shield which she used and managed to stop his attack at the right moment. And the reason the thing didn't break this time was because she reduced the surface area of the thing to increase its durability, which was quite impressive since this meant she managed to master this technique in no time. But then he heard the girl's voice telling him not to zone out during a fight. Looking up, he found her already ready to launch another one of her spells, which was a blinding flash that momentarily stunned Redhead. After that came Cold Breath that also successfully managed to connect, and the kid found his limbs covered in ice. But our girl wasn't done. She followed up with her binding spell just for reassurance, and then bolted from the place to escape the park and be done with this stupid training, since that was all she cared about. As for Redhead, yeah, he didn't know what to think since that girl was clearly sharper than he gave her credit for, so he just stood there staring at the fleeing girl. After running for quite some distance, she looked back and noticed the guy was nowhere to be seen, which was good since it meant her plan worked. Yeah, well, guess not, because almost immediately she bumped into someone blocking her path, and that someone was Redhead, who had been waiting for her at the park exit this whole time. Well, this was bad because the exit was right in front of her, but she was almost out of mana, and if she missed this time, she was finished. But then to her surprise, she heard Redhead congratulating her on passing the test. Well, she performed exceptionally well and used her powers creatively, so yeah, she passed. Which was amazing for our girl, so she asked if this means she won't have to go through these ridiculous training sessions anymore. Well, she would need to stop dreaming there because from tomorrow they would be stepping up their game with some intense training. Plus, he had already located another level 1 rot monster for her to take down. Those words brought tears to her eyes since both times she agreed to train with him, she nearly lost her life, and now he wanted to step things up. But completely ignoring her, he instructed her to get ready since he was going to take her back to her school now. Cut back to the school, and our girl had the guy cornered and was making it clear to the fool that today was the last time. After this day, he was not allowed to come to her school looking for her ever again. Yeah, our Redhead simply turned his head away, clearly hinting he was going to do exactly the opposite, and that pissed our girl off even more. But she didn't have any time to argue, so she began walking away, warning our boy that if he showed up in her class or in front of her friends again, she wouldn't ever talk to him. Well, he didn't care, and was probably thinking about new ways to torment her tomorrow as well. Just then he heard a voice from the back commenting how that girl's talent was truly terrifying, but Redhead wasn't in the mood for that, so he asked the reason for this visit. Well, apparently he found something really interesting in the city, which he was sure he was definitely going to be interested in, because he spotted 2 individuals by the name of Fitz and Kashi there. Well, that was good and all, but Redhead had just one question. Why was he running around the whole city dressed in all black in broad daylight? Because he was attracting too much attention towards himself, looking like a suspicious weirdo. The guy quickly apologized since he forgot to deactivate his ability. Getting to the topic, Redhead asked what kind of a place was he talking about earlier. Well, apparently it was some sort of factory, and that's all he could say for now. When he tried getting closer, he noticed the place had extremely tight security. All he was able to make out was that they were transferring some white substance to the facility, which was stored in some egg-like objects. And also, he noticed a very thick corruption energy in the area. After giving him the report, he asked if he should have one of their teams dispatched to the place to take down the facility, but the answer was a no since it was still too early to act. All he wanted him to do for now was to keep monitoring the place and report back if anything changes, because he was sure those people were planning something big. Other than that, there was one more thing he wanted to say to the guy, and that was to make sure to wear shoes next time he is walking around the city. And I'm pretty sure this is one of the artist's fetishes because there was absolutely no reason for this to be added into the story. Fast forward a couple of days, and we are now back at the bar. And nearby, who knows why, but our girl was seen sneaking her way towards the place. Not sure what happened in these past few days, but she was being extra cautious for some reason. That is when the door to the place suddenly began opening just as she was about to knock, and her soul almost left her body as she found a Frankenstein-looking creature inches away from her face. Terrified, she activated her power and demanded the man's identity and what he was doing in this place. All that commotion caught our blonde's attention, who came to check what was going on and found our girl standing outside the door. which was surprising since she was supposed to be out training with Redhead. Well, apparently it was our Redhead who sent her to this place because he wanted her to go on an actual mission as a reward since she managed to survive everything. Yeah, the only thing he was curious about was that surviving part, and that got him wondering just what kind of training had that man been putting the poor girl through. As for Frankenstein, he apologized to the girl for scaring her earlier and excused himself since he had to go do some shopping. Seeing him walking away, our girl asked who that person was and was informed that was one of their comrades named Long Ju, and assured the girl that man was a gentle giant and won't harm anyone. Changing topics, he asked about the mission she was talking about earlier, but was interrupted by Ning Ning, who called our girl over since they were just about ready to head out on a mission so she could join them. While making their way to the gathering spot, they made small talk, specifically about our girl being a little too busy these past few days. Well, she had been training with Redhead, so she didn't get the time to pay them a visit, and apparently whatever kind of training it was, she was just glad she was still alive. And that shocked Ning Ning, so she asked just what kind of training was that guy putting her through. Well, for starters, she was taught how to control her spiritual power and inject it into her reindeer, but too little meant it won't wake up, and too much meant she gets bonked on the head. Second up was surprise attacks with Redhead suddenly appearing out of nowhere to surprise attack her regardless of the time or location. And thirdly, she was forced to take on a tentacle rot monster all on her own. Yeah, look at that blushing face Wen started making the moment he heard the word tentacle monster. And the girls immediately picked up on it and were sure he had something inappropriate going through his head. So Ning Ning started absolutely destroying the little pervert with her stomps. After dealing with the guy, she told the girl that training she was going through was way beyond anything for a novice cultivator. Although the girl was somewhat surprised, she was also proud since now she was able to get her reindeer in a half-awake state, which was just absurd for Ning Ning. But there were some side effects of that training, specifically her overreacting to the slightest things and developing paranoia, because she even got attacked a couple of times in her home right after she got out of the shower, which I'm pretty sure that guy was doing on purpose. But his excuse was Ralt monsters don't care about the time or place when attacking. Just as Ning Ning was telling the girl that was considered sexual harassment, they heard Glass's voice asking if all of them were ready for the mission, and was immediately caught off guard when he found our girl already ready to blow his brains out with her spells. Yeah, well, she did it again, so she apologized to Glasses for overreacting. But Ning Ning assured the girl not to worry since it was all Redhead's fault for making her this jumpy in the first place. As for their mission today, they were heading out to hunt a level 2 rope monster. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know what happens next, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.